Everyone needs the seas to be wetter. We don't need all our cheese to be cheddar. Our only needs to get better and better and better and better.
Hey everyone, Jessica Jake here with the Better and Betterer podcast. I'm here with Jeni Holla today. She is the Akashic Nomad. Welcome. Please do tell us about everything. What does that mean to be the Akashic Nomad and so forth?
Well, first of all, I'm a nomad. So I've been living my life with my husband and two dogs on the road for the past over 2 years now. We sold everything and we stay in furnished places. So if you're watching this on video, then you can see that I am in like what looks like a house. And if you're listening, then you can't see that. And just know that we stay in furnished places where we have washer and dryer and a full kitchen and 2 bedrooms. So we're not doing the trendy van life or anything like that. We typically stay out. I'll just answer ahead of time some of the common questions I get about being a nomad is that we typically stay in places for a month is what we like minimum. We've really come to find that that gives us the opportunity to get settled in, set up our office space, work, see the area without rushing through anything. Back 2 years ago, 2 weeks felt like a long time. And now 2 weeks would be like a whirlwind to us. We'd be like, oh my God. And then I think, staying longer than 3 months would feel too long. So we're between like 1 to 3 months is where we're at.
That is so cool. So I just interviewed Brad Axelrod from on the podcast, and he had similar commentary. So like I have 2 nomads in a row.
How fun.
and I've literally always heard digital nomad, but it didn't really click like what it meant, which is of course the very obvious thing that you're moving around like a nomad. But yeah, and then just how long you want to stay planted. I think this is such an amazing time to be alive, to have those options. And I notice you have your cute dog in the background and just maybe being able to make it happen. It's so inspiring too. Yeah.
I love this lifestyle. And then like, where's the Akashic fit in? Okay.
Right.
So in the spiritual community, even though there are a lot of people who are aware about Akashic Records, there's still quite a few who don't know what it is, even in or outside of the spiritual community. And so the Akashic Records is something that I work with. And what it is it's an energy field that holds all of our souls, past, present, and future possibilities and timelines. So it would be similar getting an Akashic Record reading or working with the Akashic Records. It would be similar to getting like an intuitive reading or an angel reading or an oracle reading or things along those nature. Of course, it's just a matter of like, where is the information being pulled from? What are they connecting into? You know, if it's connecting into an angel or a spirit, or maybe even your spirit guides or your higher self, that's where the information is coming from. And in the Akashic Records, it's coming from your soul. It's coming from the energy of your soul as well as your guides. And so it's a cute way, the Akashic Nomad, they go together. It's cute. It like kind of explains what I do. That's where the name came from. So.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And when we think about like connecting beyond our, we have our conscious mind day to day, and we could pull up certain things from our subconscious and certain things we can't. But then we could also like communicate maybe in our dreams or in different states with our subconscious. And then below that, a term I've been using lately is super conscious. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's like the more soulful, spiritual level. And then also such a fascinating question is like, what is the difference between soul and spirit? And then how do I connect even broader and even broader? And so when you talk about, it depends on like where you're connecting. It sounds like this is really a very foundational level. Would that be fair to say? Like maybe one of the deepest connections, you think?
I'm just sitting with this because I think that it could be perceived that way, and it is quite possibly that way for many people who are drawn to this work. But I also would like to leave space and room for some of the other modalities that are out there that can still provide a level of depth for somebody. And I also feel like depth is very relative. What I consider to be deep, maybe you're shallow, or what your deep is maybe my shallow, and vice versa. And so the work in the Akashic Records and the amount of energy and the love and support that comes through the readings and the work and the communion and relationship with that is very transformative and is very powerful. I named my business Akashic Activations because I found that when I was first starting and I did a ton of readings out the gate, I found that like 9 out of 10 people were reaching back out to me being like, oh my God, that lit a fire under my ass, or I'm so activated to do things. Like a lot of people were having these moments where all these synchronicities were coming into their life. And I don't know, it's just, I don't know. I'm answering your question, but not, because I feel like
yeah. Well, it's definitely beyond our subconscious, right? It's definitely beyond us as spirits projected through all these, I've heard these funny like meat suit, biological space suit, bone box, earthling suit, costume, whatever, right? Like, so we're connecting beyond like what the body is kind of used to doing in its day-to-day, just to like live on Earth, stay alive, have some fun. But yeah, so definitely lower than subconscious. And then it is beyond even our spirit though, right? Like you said, you're getting guides or record readers, or
I don't know if I would. I've not been asked the question in this way, so this is like off the cuff. Going into it, is I'm not sure if I would explain it quite that way, because the energy in the Akashic records is all that was, and ever will be, from a possibility standpoint. So when someone comes to a reading, they're coming a lot of times for clarity, or they want to get unstuck, like the typical things you would go to a coach or another reader for. But what's happening is yes, I'm communicating with the record keepers and your guides, and they're sharing with me intuitively. That's how I'm receiving the messages, like the messages from your soul path, from your soul book, if we had to put like names and labels on it. And so, I mean, your soul essence and energy is already in there. All that's happening is it's just being reflected back to you and helping you to remember things that you already know at a soul level, but maybe you haven't remembered from the human experience. That's what I feel based on my experience.
Right. So would maybe oneness be a term? I know it's hard to put words to things, and that's part of what makes it tricky too, is like so many people come up with their own terms and then you're just scratching your heads about what's going on. But I mean,
I feel definitely like oneness could be. I mean, I guess it depends on what you believe in and what it is that you stand behind and what it is that resonates with you, because the way I interpret and have received oneness, and maybe you have a slightly different or the same experience, is that yes, like I am you and you are me, and that person over there is us too, and God and universe and spirit lives within all of us. So therefore the records or our soul or anything, like it is all one. But at the same time, we're on this 3D earth plane, and we are experiencing the separateness of things. We are experiencing our own individual journeys and our own unfolding of things. And like, especially when you talk about a 3D timeline, because this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, although many of us understand and know that time is quantum and it's all really happening right now. So one of the things that I have heard other spiritual mentors talk about is, like your past lives aren't really your past lives. They are actually right now. And so the fact that, you're looking for a past life, it's just interesting when you get into that side of the topic, because then it becomes more of the oneness, where then it's like, okay, yes, it's all one, woohoo, but like I'm still me in this body. Like, how do I move forward?
Yeah. I was thinking, well, we just had this storm, the Hurricane Hillary came through, and I have an extra house, gets a cat, and I do have my 2 small dogs, so we might hear some of their antics because they're all roaming free right now. Nevertheless, I was thinking about a possible analogy for that, like all lives happening at the same time, is we hear the lightning. No, what is it first? You see the lightning and then you hear the thunder after, and you could count, quote, time between the lightning and the thunder, but there really isn't a separation in the time, right? It's really all boom. And so on some level, that's kind of how I make sense in my own mind of like what our idea of time. I was reading a book, what was it called, like Love Is All There Is, or something. It was like the past lives and the reincarnation and people finding each other, and they explained it like to be here on Earth, it's the frequency has to get so slow that it just seems like there's time or something like that. So it's hard to imagine. And the first time you hear it, probably, I mean, it was like, what are you talking about? Of course there's time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it just, after a while, especially if you look at the physics formulas that like show things that are also equally mind-blowingly impossible, like, you know, if you go really fast and the mass of something becomes infinite and you're like, well, that can't happen either, you know. So one way or another, you're scratching your head.
Yeah. And I think that's where this is my personal opinion on this. I feel like, you know, as we learn these different concepts and we're like, what in the hell? We eventually come into this place where we accept whatever it is, or we align or we resonate with whatever it is as like the truth or our truth or a fraction of the truth, until something else comes along that has us go, huh, well, maybe it's this, you know, we sit into something else.
Yeah, I usually say now my current understanding or my current thinking or my current beliefs. Because there were so many things that I just didn't believe. Like I took a hypnotist, like a certification as a practitioner, and I didn't want to link to where I got it from because she also had regression, past life regression hypnosis. And at that time I was just like, what is that? You know, like I don't want to be associated with that. And now of course I'm like, oh, where do I get trained on that? You know, so over time, you know, depending on how we grew up, what we learned, what we really believed and want to hold on to. And then it's just like, oh, wow. Yeah. So yeah, part of it is like, how can I understand when I am in this 3D form of something and just being an adventurer really, and always being open. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
How did you get into doing these readings?
Woo. So I have been on a spiritual journey for over 10 years. I mean, maybe even 20. If I go all the way back to probably in my teens, I'd have to really think back. But my dad gave me one of the books, The Celestine Prophecy. And so that, I guess, maybe started the journey. Maybe I was already on it. I was always a very curious kid. You know, my mom tells me, I'd be like, how do the pipes under the sink work? And she would answer, and it would never be good enough for me because I'd be like, wait, but how does this? And she's like, I don't know. You just flush the toilet and down it goes, you know? So I was always extremely curious. And I've done a lot of stuff spiritually. And actually, I realized this recently. I was introduced to the Akashic Records probably 10 years ago because 10 years ago, because I went to a meetup group, a spiritual meetup group, when I was traveling the country on my sales job. And it was in Dallas, and it was at someone's house. And there was a lady there talking about the Akashic Records and led people on a meditation for how to connect to the Akashic Records. And when I think back to my memory of that experience, I don't remember everything crystal clear, but I will say that at the time, some of that was a bit like out there for me. And, you know, she was talking about the library and it looks like this. And I was like, what in the fuck is this shit? But all right, I'll try it. You know, I was really just like kind of borderline weirded out about it, but curious at the same time. And so she led us through that. I didn't have anything in that moment that I specifically felt or had unlocked or anything. And I booked a reading with her. And in the reading, you know, I listened, and I think I actually still have the recording of that reading. I should go back and listen. But yeah, like I just listened, and I remember being like, oh, okay, I guess it's right. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just kind of, it happened and it was a cool thing, but that was it, right? So fast forward, here over the past 3 years, I've been diving in deep into lots of things spiritually. Like any of the edges of spirituality, I went on a deep dive in, whether it be about aliens or different energies, or, I mean, dare I say, you know, the green reptilian, you know, like, I'm not saying I believe in all these things that I went down. I just went and I was just learning about lots of different things. And so through all of that, one of the things I learned about was how we are making a transition from 3D into 5D energetically. And I was learning about that concept from different people on YouTube I was following. And I walk into a Barnes and Noble, and there's the book Waking Up in 5D, sitting on the shelf, facing outwards. It wasn't even like hidden. Like it was facing me as like, this was a main book. And I was shocked that that book was like in like, what is it called? mainstream America. Like I was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
expecting these things. Yeah. Like, so anyways, I bought the book. It blew my mind. I ended up buying all the author's books, which led me to the last one, opening the Akashic Records. And I was like, I don't need that. That's not for me. Well, I ended up buying it, ended up going through the book, had my own personal experiences, ended up going through the classes, and then here I am, fully branded as the Akashic Nomad, full out, sharing channel messages online. Like a year ago, I was not. A year ago, I don't know if I told you this, but a year ago, I saw a memory on my Facebook that I had decided to be brave and share with people publicly that I was into oracle cards. And I was like, it's good to like lean into who you are and own your truth. So this is like a step I'm taking in that direction. And I was like kind of shy about it. I was like, I like oracle cards. And here I am, like now channeling messages that I'm sure some people think are bogus and others find them very endearing, right? Like I'm really out there in a big way.
Yeah.
Like
wow. So yeah, I mean oh my God, that's so amazing. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing everything. And my two questions I want to go down the path of, and it's up to you if you want to go down both or one or neither. One is, what is 5D? Like I see it all the time on my feeds. I have someone who does like someone named Activations with JJ. It's the coolest little audios that just get you right in some kind of zone. But I have no idea what it is. And then number two, when you said you've read the book and had certain experiences, I'd love to hear one or as many as you wanted to share. So that's what kind of, a lot of things were jumping in my mind, but those are the big ones that I was like, oh, good. I need to know more about that.
Okay, so I'll do my best to explain 5D. And now that this is the third time it's been asked of me in this type of fashion, I'm going to work on having like a better, well-grounded definition, because obviously the fact that this is part of my story, I understand it like internally, but to explain it in layman's terms, I want to get better. So I'm going to do my best. Let me know if anything is like, nah, not followed.
Okay.
So the way I understand 5D is that, first, let's start off by saying that there are multiple dimensions. Some spiritual teachers talk about 12, some talk about 100, some talk about infinite. I believe that there are infinite dimensions that we can't even comprehend, but sometimes we need to put things in labels. Okay, like, oh, here's all the dimensions. So when it comes to the Akashic Records, there are teachers who have talked about the Akashic Records existing in the 7th dimension or existing in the 12th dimension. I've heard it both ways. I personally don't have any experience like firsthand to say, well, this is the dimension that it's in. I think from the like where I'm at now is I don't feel that it's so important to know what dimension the Akashic Records are in. I don't think that that's super important to know. So I'm just sharing that. I'm just sharing like a couple things to plug into. Now, when it's the 5th dimension, so the 3rd dimension here, we've got the time, we have duality, we have good and bad, we have fear and suffering and joy and bliss. Like we have all these different experiences here and a linear experience of them. If you're talking about raising in frequency, because one of the things you said before is that different beings may have to lower their frequency to slow down to be on this frequency. So as you go up in different dimensions, the frequency is then raised too. So you'll hear a lot in spiritual communities, people talking about raise your vibe, raise your frequency. So that way, tie in law of attraction, that way you attract other things in that frequency to you, right? Like you're in this higher vibrational frequency to then attract like things to that frequency. Okay, so the whole idea of waking up in 5D or transitioning into 5th dimensional place, it's nowhere that you go. The dimensions aren't anywhere you go. Like the way that resonates with me is that they're all here. All the dimensions are right here where you're sitting. It's more a matter of like which energetic frequency, which dimension are you tuning to? So in the 5th dimension, the energy and frequency in that dimension is one of love, is one of where the decisions are more of a God-like decision. There is no non-God decision. Like it's all highest and best good type of a frequency there. And even so, I think this ties into, and you may have to correct me on this if I'm not saying this right, but this types into a lot of people talking about how we're in the age of Aquarius now, right? The age of love.
I've heard this. I am not the one who would be able to comment or correct.
I think this whole thing about how we're stepping into this age of love and how a lot is shifting and Earth is shifting, like all of this talk.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like giving a couple different points that can give you different rabbit holes to run down. So fifth dimensional frequency is continuing to live your life from this place and continuing to shed, the things that don't serve you, the beliefs that don't serve you, let go, forgive, come into loving yourself more, come into trusting yourself more. It's like all these things that we're doing to experience more peace from like our inner mind. Then it's also helping us raise into this frequency and vibration, which a lot of people are talking about 5D, because it's really blissful. Like who wouldn't want to just live their life in love and harmony and bliss, and it's so beautiful, and right?
Yeah,
There's like that aspect to it, but I feel like there's also a shift from humanity that we're all being like pulled in this direction. Now, whether we want to do all these things, whether we want to align to these things, whether we want to explore the shadows of our, and heal our thing, like I think that's really up to each person. But there has been an awakening, and so whether someone knows that they're going towards a fifth dimensional state or not, I think is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So I'll pause. I just said a lot of different things.
No, I think that's beautiful. And I was thinking too about being the eye of the storm, and there's some posts I see sometimes that are like, you're telling people to raise their vibe and people have traumas and this, but I'm always bringing in the trauma informed lens and things like that are truly healing on the neurological level, to like multiplicity of mind, different parts of us and shadows and all this. So you're constantly healing and like taking the load off of yourself one way or another. And when you do that and you do show up more in love, it doesn't mean like you're putting yourself like, ooh, I'm love now and you should be too, and like a judgmental by any means. But it's like we could be this eye of the storm in the face of those around us who have had their own experiences, have their own stuff going on, they're maybe on their own healing that they're trying to embark on or trying to hide and bury, and maybe for them right now the most protective they could do is be in denial and have shadows, and so without that judgment, but to be able to observe what's going on rather than like absorb it and take on the heaviness, so we could truly always be that eye of the storm. And that's the analogy I love. I got it from Shaman Doric. And it's great because we just had this hurricane, but I literally draw like the cyclone or the hurricane. What do I know about weather? But the heart is like right there. And so like, where could I stay in that frequency? And then where do I get my own triggers? And then that shows me something else I could call back to love in myself. Yeah. And then the next time I show up, how good am I at being that eye of the storm? And maybe that means the better I get at it or the more evolved I get, or the more shifts I make, right? Then I can be the eye of the storm in like situations that, before. I've come from New York. A lot of people just tend to get really angry and screaming at each other. Like I probably flipped half a dozen people off on the road to work, and that was like the normal life. And now I'm just like, okay, they're going slow, whatever, like and I really don't care. Like, it's not even like I'm telling myself not to care. It's just whatever. So, so I think that might be like, I never really heard the explanation of 5D, but what I'm taking away, it is like, we're living more high vibe, we're living more in that love frequency, and then that other stuff just doesn't matter anymore. It's not even an internal dialogue. It just, we are just kind, we are just more loving, we are just more compassionate, and that's just how we show up. Would that be like kind of?
Yeah, I'd say for the purpose of this podcast, I think that's a great starting point, to be able to really, I guess, understand what it is in very simple terms. And then of course, if you or others want to go deeper, you can YouTube probably, like
I should,
right, and kind of see what other teachers are saying. Maybe even talk into your own intuition and see what comes through. Because what I wrote down is I'm going to ask in the records and see what they share
Nice.
about what that means, and what would be important to know now. Because I mean, they don't always share with me like what it means fully, the full on everything definition. They may just explain like what is needed to know now in this moment when I'm tapping in, or what, depending on if I'm sharing it live or if I'm sharing it, you know what I'm saying? Like the information will come through accordingly. So yeah, I'm just sitting here because there's another piece of this that Lori Ladd talked about on her channel, was talking about the earth wanting to move from 3D to 5D. So the earth even going through this and kind of bringing everybody along on this process. So there's another layer that I don't know if many, I'm honestly not sure if a lot of spiritual teachers are talking about that. I have no idea. But there's another layer to it as well that's just talking about earth wanting to have this experience as a consciousness to move from a state of 3D into 5D.
Have you heard of heart math? Yeah, because I was thinking, number one, with the 5D, it's beyond just the eye of the storm, but now you're connected and plugged in, tuned in, tapped in, whatever way you want to like put words to that. But with heart math, they were talking about getting into heart coherence, and they did these studies and measured the magnetic resonance of the earth, then got people into heart, oh my goodness, so excited I can't even talk, heart coherence all over the world, and then measured the earth's, I think it was, I don't know if it was electromagnetism or whatever they're using, and it shifted too. So there is that connection in the energy. So that would be fascinating to check out, you know, that aspect that you mentioned for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Just everything getting more and more and more and more aligned with love, like more tuned in, tapped in, aligned, calling back to love, things that have been imprinted or alchemized into a different state, but like we could, I always think love is the foundation, and in any of that, we just call it back. So that's fascinating. Okay, experiences. Any experiences you could share with us?
Okay, so what, I'll just say this about the book. What I liked about the book is that it was very practical. I thought it was just going to be like, here's what the Akashic Records are, and I was going to be reading from an intellectual standpoint. No, it was like, hey, here's the opening prayer, do the opening prayer. You know, actually it started as like, ask these questions of your higher self and like kind of write in your journal what comes through.
Yeah.
Now, open the records and write what comes through, you know, channel what comes through with that.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I had two very different answers, like had different feelings with it. And I never thought that I would be able to do that. Like I believed in it. I had lots of intuitive coaches and readings and all kinds of things, but never thought I would be the one on the other end doing that. And so going into the classes and the training, that's when most of my experiences and my aha moments really happened. So so you're learning, and then we do a lot of breakouts, and we'll break out, we're one-on-one, and you're practicing. And so they're like, okay, you know, and they give you generic questions, and they also set the tone where it's like, look, this isn't like a free Akashic record reading. Know that everybody's practicing. Could just be gibberish that comes through. It could be good, but like don't attach to anything that's shared in the practice sessions. It's just that practice. So I remember my first couple times I did the prayer, and then there was like certain questions, you know, like, oh, what can I know about my mother? And I remember like sitting there and just like staring and wondering like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna come through? Like do. So that's how it started. And then as I continued to trust and just say whatever it was that was coming up, that continued to build my confidence. So one time, I don't remember the question was, but I saw roosters or chickens. And the girl was like, oh my God, I'm in Hawaii and these roosters are all around me. And I couldn't hear them. They weren't like cock-a-doodle. Right. Like, you couldn't hear them. And I was like, oh my God, cool, you know? And so it's like little things like that. And then it would accelerate in the readings where I would have doubts. I would have a reading and I was like, oh, that reading kind of sucked. Like, I don't think I did really well. Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe I did okay, but it wasn't as magical as my other readings. And then right after that, I would have the most profound magical reading with somebody where, like, I would see an angel behind them and there was an energy healing that happened. And I was channeling a poem for them. And, like, all of this stuff was so mind blowing in the reading that I was like, okay, like, this is real. So it's like time after time that would happen. One of the experiences that I had was someone asked, like, oh, what can I know about my daughter? And so I saw a picture of a clown riding a tricycle. And I was like, in my mind before I said it, I was like, really? Like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't know what that means. So I said, okay, I see a picture of a clown riding a tricycle, just trusting the process. She's like, oh my God, I know exactly what to do with that. I was mind blown. Wow. She knew what to do with that, like, little piece of information. And she shared with me after that her daughter was in the circus, and that she didn't share the details, but she said, my daughter's in the circus. So I knew, like, that was a way that told me what I needed to know.
Wow.
More. I had another reading one time where a woman came on and she said, what can I know about today? And in this reading, she was one of the people who doesn't want to, like, show her cards. So through the whole reading, she kept, like, the straightest face, like, never, like, showed any emotion. She was so like, I'm not giving anything to this girl. I want to make sure it's real. And that's fine. However someone comes is totally fine. It doesn't matter to me. So she asked that question, and I see a vision of a birthday cake going into a grave. And I was like, what the hell? Like, do I share this? Is this in the highest and best good? So I asked my higher self, like, is this okay to share? Got a yes. So I was like, okay, well, just sharing what's here. And I shared it with her. Straight ass face, dead ass face. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm ruining this. Like, what is this? So when I was to go about the reading, there was a lot of other beautiful things that came through. So after, I was like, you have to tell me, like, that one piece. I'm so curious. Did that, like, make sense, or was that just total bogus? And she was like, no, it actually makes sense, because my grandma, we were celebrating the death of my grandma. Well, not celebrating, but, like, it was the anniversary of the death of my grandma. And right before her passing, we had a huge party for her. And so the cake going into the grave was like a symbol for her that her mom or her grandma was, like, there with her, having this, like, acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness.
So I just got chills. What are your thoughts on that? Like, when you have the readings and you get, sometimes people call them spirit bumps. Like, do you ever get that? Okay.
Yes. So pre-Akashic Records, I'd get chills all the time, and I just thought it was cute because I didn't really know what to do with it. And usually I just said, oh, it's confirmation that something, you know what I'm saying, or maybe something resonated with me. Since doing this work, the chills have shown up in many different ways. So sometimes the chills will be like a full body chill, maybe what you just experienced, or, like, that feeling. And usually for me, whenever it comes to a reading, I'm just like, oh, I just got chills. And usually it's just another confirmation. Sometimes I'll get, like, a full energy, like, flow, I don't know what to call it, through my body. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I felt that. And so the way I perceive that is that it's like a stronger, I guess, resonance, or a stronger, like, confirmation, because it, like, shoots through my body. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, holy shit. Okay, you may want to pay attention to that, because that was strong. Because I'm feeling, on behalf of other people, these different sensations that come through. And not every single thing will have a meaning, but a lot of times, I'm the channel of that energy, or of that healing, or of that message beyond the words or the pictures.
Yeah, that's such a good distinction, because it's a superficial, almost skin chill, versus the night my grandfather died. He woke me up in the middle of the night. I was sound asleep, and it was literally an energy wave through me. Like, so it was more than just surface, like, goosebumpy kind of stuff. And he woke me up, and I was just like, go back to the hospital. But he didn't. Yeah. And then when it was just a whole thing, but, like, I just knew he was gone. But they call that a flyby passing. There's this whole shared crossing research, and all different ways that those crossings happen. And so, yeah, it was definitely, like, through me. Like, you know, or I was in it, or I don't know how you would describe it, more so than just like a surface, like, ooh.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say too, based on like what we're talking about, something that's coming up is, for each person, I think that each of us have to identify what those things mean for us. Because a lot of times, especially when it comes to our intuition, our body is talking to us.
Mhm.
And so as you continue to go around, you may find that the body chills means something for you.
Mhm.
Even hone that in, like, oh wow, every time the body chills happens, this is what it means. And then you can just anchor that in as a sign, as a symbol to communicate with your higher self, with your intuition, with your guides, and then to uncover what do the other things mean for you. That's how it shows up for me. Like when it shows up really strong, I'm like, okay, that means something else, because I can feel it. But as I've done this work, I continue to trust myself even more than I ever have. And I trust my intuition. And the thing I've most learned to trust, because one of my senses is claircognizance, which is knowing, is trusting those knowings. Because you can see pictures, you can hear things, you can feel things, and I get them in all those ways too. But the knowing is when it just drops in.
Yeah.
And there's just certain things that I just know that you probably just know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's just certain things you know. And whether it's something that's been downloaded that's dropped in from an intuitive standpoint, or if it's just a soul knowing of something you know at a soul level, own that and honor that.
Yeah.
That's valid.
Yes,
That is
absolutely.
valid information.
Yeah.
And I can give an example for that on the knowing. I had a little bit of challenges with my mom where we weren't talking. And I had come into the knowing, like the deep knowing, that I was at peace with where we were at in the relationship, knowing that if we never talked again, I was at peace with that, knowing that like beyond this life, we would, it would be fine, because I was still sending her love. And it's not because I didn't love her. I just was like, I'm good with this, Yes, I desire and I'd love to talk to her, but I also had a sense of peace with that. And in sharing that information with people, a common response usually is, oh my God, you have to talk to her. It's your mom. You'll never, she's going to die and you're going to miss her. And those are all valid things, but like, I know what I know. And so instead of us second guessing what it is we know as our truth by outside people, I think it's fine. You could check like, oh, is that something I want to try on? Am I maybe, is this not in alignment? Or like when we know it, own that shit. I was like, no, I know this. This is what feels so right to me right now. I appreciate you sharing that my parents are really important and that I should talk to them more and I shouldn't throw it away. I don't feel like I'm doing that.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
in the future, like you said, my current belief or my current knowing, maybe in the future that changes. But right now, we can't always be making decisions based on what will happen in the future. What if we just made decisions on the now, the ones that felt the best now to us, and let that be our driving force instead of all this other outside influence?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the more you're in your true intuition, then the less you don't even care about what anyone else is saying. And it is okay to like hear it out, because we could get confused. So I was thinking about this because I think people define these terms differently, but there's that intuition where you just know, like that's the knowing when you are tuned into spirit, or whichever way you call it, or Akashic Records, like you're like this clown on a tricycle, and that's that, inarguable. And then there's our gut feelings, which I've learned I could trust my gut. And so luckily my advice my whole life to other people was, if you learned you could trust your gut, but you like literally feel it in your gut, right? Like if you've learned you could trust your gut, then trust your gut. And luckily that's how I said it, because then I'm finding out now, like with people who have trauma, there's like static that could be introduced from that enteric gut system to how they're perceiving the world, right? So, and then there's the other level of just, well, there's so many things, but we have our hardwired instincts, or the hardwired fears and stuff like this. So I think discerning like what's coming through, but if it is intuition, then you just know, or you just saw, or you just heard, or whatever your clairs, etc. So getting good at discerning where the message is from and if there's any like static coming in on top of it. But I think I've heard people use intuition to mean things other than the way I'm talking about it, right? And then that gets extra confused because then people have a mistrust of their gut, if they call it gut intuition, or you know what I mean, like, so you have to define these things for yourself, and then like you said with the chills and stuff, like understand what it means for you.
What this is bringing up for me is, I don't know if this is, let's just share it and we'll see what comes out with this.
Okay.
With all these different definitions and all these different ways of doing things, so many things are nuanced. And so like in this conversation, we can only talk about so many things because we can't sit here and unpack all the 800,000 different ways that people can interact with intuition, and then the 800 different ways that it can be trauma informed, and you know what I'm saying? Like we can't, everything is nuanced.
Right.
I don't feel like there is any absolute things, or there's very few, because I guess you could say that oneness, God, universe, spirit is in fact absolute, but everything is nuanced is my point. So with that being said, right. I love what we were saying, like it's kind of like define it yourself. And I feel like there's a balance between using the outside world to learn or to expand or to understand when you're in that space of growth or learning things, but more importantly, always coming back to you as to what makes sense to you. I feel like a lot of times we're looking for the outside world to tell us what things should mean to us, or what steps we should take, or how we should do things. And I'm not saying those questions are wrong. Sometimes we just have those questions. But the more that we can learn to trust ourselves in whatever way that means, whether it means through the gut, or through the third eye, or through a bird that shows up that confirms things for, or whatever it is, whatever the signs are that you can trust yourself, I feel like that is going to take us a lot further than getting confused in the chaos around this person's way and that person's way and this person's way and this definition and that definition,
Yeah.
So really, I feel like it's really important for us to determine what that means for us and not getting caught up in the whirlwind of this person's thing and that person's thing and why they don't mix. And I don't know, I just feel like those kind of things, when we look for external stuff, it causes us to be more confused than if we can sit and be internal with ourselves and learn. This keeps being shown to me, learn to listen and trust, ourselves, and to listen and strengthen our intuition. I feel like this message is so like in my face right now. Not only is it showing up in readings I have with people, it's the personal like group. I'm doing 7 weeks of magic in a group program. I'm doing it one-on-one. And this is like the common theme in my life right now. So for me, it feels like one of the most important things that we can do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much. So that almost sounds like the seed of a good invite to the audience to maybe try something, or unless there's something else you were thinking, like, I'm just so inspired listening to like all your expertise and stories. And what would you invite people who are listening to maybe try?
Yeah, I mean, just play, like be willing to play, maybe find a friend or something that you can practice some intuitive things with, where like everything's not on the line. Like where it's not like, oh my God, they asked me about this huge life decision and what is my intuition saying? No, you gotta like practice, give yourself a break, like practice with things that like don't matter. Do I wear the pink shirt today or do I wear the yellow shirt today? Like I don't know, keep it simple. We want to overcomplicate things because we feel like we should already have it all figured out, and just trust that process. And if you're wanting to explore more about Akashic Record related stuff, then I have 2 points of entry, and there's probably more than this, but I have 2 points of entry that are coming up right now. One, weekly-ish, I send out channeled messages from the Akashic Records to people's emails who are interested. So if that's something that you want to feel into the energy from like a written standpoint, you can go to Jeni, Jeni Holla, HOLLA.com. And then the other thing is that 2 times a month, I just added a second time on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. I go live and I do free mini Akashic record readings. And so if you want to just get a little taste and feel the energy from that perspective, then I invite you to come there. Remember, it's live, it's public, so know that that's the case. And you're not on video. What it is you're like typing in the comments and we're interacting that way. So that would be another fun way.
Those are great options. I'll be sure to put it in the show notes as well. But you said JeniHolla.com.
Yeah,
right?
for the that's for the email list. So right now, the way things are set up is I've got that forwards to the email list. It makes it easy for me to say it because I have my own podcast. And so instead of being like subscribepage.io, so my name forwards to that, and then I have another link that forwards to my link tree, and then I have
Gotcha.
to my readings. That's the way it is right now, because once again, keep it simple. Keep it simple is where I'm at the moment.
Nice. That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I just love the way you speak and lay it all out there and just share. I forget what you were saying. It was like where you're putting like the weirded out. It, like you just like the reality of what it's like to embark and be interested and be curious in this, and how sometimes it just sounds like BS, and then the next thing you know, you're just like, oh. And I think
they're not letting me believe the fact that what I'm doing is BS, because every time I've had that doubt, or I'm like, God, am I making this up? That does happen. I do think that sometimes, but I'll tell you, I think it less and less and less, because every time I think it, there is like a mind-blowing experience right after that, where the record keepers are like, I don't think so. You're not thinking. I'm like, okay. So basically, I'm coming into the place where that's not something I'm saying.
Right.
For you too, with intuition, right? If you're constantly questioning it, how can you anchor that in? How can you strengthen it if you're always like, oh, I don't know. Like, I would not be able to grow as an Akashic record reader. My readings would probably suck because I would be questioning it all the time. Like, same for you. Just at some point, I'm gonna be straight up here. At some point, you just gotta fucking start believing in yourself. Try it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
At some point, believing yourself is gonna be more attractive than believing like the external world or what others say, or the 10-step way to get there or whatever. Like, it's right. Now, you probably already do trust yourself to a certain extent, because we all do. We all have these moments where we do trust ourselves, but I'm talking about coming into a fullness with that. At some point, you got to just be like, fuck it. I'm going to listen to myself here. I'm going to wear the yellow shirt, even though I want to wear the pink shirt. Maybe you meet someone else who has the yellow shirt and you're like, oh my God, besties for life. I don't know. You just don't know. But when you're controlling everything or looking to have it all figured out, you're cutting off possibility.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. So take good care. Thanks so much again. It's been amazing chatting with you.
Yeah, I agree. Bye.
Bye.
This is lovely. Sunlight streaming and better. Shine up like the beams of light spreader. Keep on dreaming.